Now on Hot Mike with Hudney Withrow, how to take down the Chiefs dynasty. The SEC is wild, and Captain America doesn't like America. Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike here on OutKick. While you're here, we hope that you'll hit the button for us that says like, give us a thumbs up there, leave us a comment, and subscribe. Chad, the Chiefs dynasty is real. The three-peat, though, is epic. And I mentioned earlier this week, I'm here for it. I'm surprised I am, but I want to see it happen. Do you?
Yes, I do. And I think that if it was almost any other opponent in this game, other than the Philadelphia Eagles, I would be rooting for the NFC champion. But because it's the Eagles, and I'm just kind of tired of their whole thing, I'm fine with the Chiefs winning it and making history in this game. But I will say this also, Hutton. I'm not going to shed any tears over whoever loses this game. It's not one of those situations where, like, I'm really invested. Man, I'd love to see this guy or this team or this coach get over one time and win a Super Bowl. Because there are games I go into, and while I'm not some passionate fan of either team, I have a passionate rooting interest in the game just because I want to see someone win a Super Bowl, or I want to see this team not win another Super Bowl. In this game with these two teams, I'm not overly passionate one way or the other about who wins the game, but I'm kind of like you at this point. I want to see history made.
Yeah, and look, there's the eras that everyone discusses of the past,
like Taylor Swift's eras.
The eras,
like the Eras tour.
That ties into everything. Ties into the Chiefs somehow.
We're contractually obligated to mention Taylor Swift at least 3 times in every show to make sure we tie into the proper algorithm. So I'll go ahead and say it 2 more times. Taylor Swift, Eras Tour, best ever. Hutton, go ahead.
By doing that, we say hello, Swifties, because you're here.
Yep.
Brady and Manning, you had that rivalry because you saw both quarterbacks win at points in their career and in that rivalry. There is no there's no quarterback on the same level as Patrick Mahomes. When you just look at the quarterbacks, there's Allen and Jackson and Burrow. And right now, Jalen Hurts will make his second appearance and in the Super Bowl. We're going to see him make his second without a single appearance by some of these other stars of the league. I mean, that's jarring here. And the other teams don't agree with us. They don't want to see the Chiefs win again. There were several teams beyond just Houston and Buffalo who could help take down the Chiefs dynasty this postseason. They didn't realize it, I guess. Look, for all of the new hires across the league, the one coach who didn't seem to garner much attention is a coach who should have been a serious candidate for the head job. And if you want to take out the Chiefs, hire away defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. First off, he's earned it. He's qualified, and he should have a true opportunity to be a head coach again and get that gig. Second, what are the Chiefs? Who are the Chiefs in 2023 and 24 without him and that defense? I'll tell you, they're winners of just one Super Bowl. First thing that comes to mind immediately is the AFC title and last year against Baltimore, and they just took away the run game. This past weekend was a great game, a back-and-forth game, but we saw the Chiefs' defense make the stops, and they've been doing that throughout the year. The offense has been good enough, right? They've been doing enough. But as Sports Illustrated pointed out, the Las Vegas Raiders have hired 4 head coaches since Steve Spagnuolo advanced to his first of 5 Super Bowls with the Chiefs as coordinator. You have the Denver Broncos. They've hired 3 head coaches. The Los Angeles Chargers, they've hired 2 head coaches since Spagnuolo landed in Kansas City in 2019. The Saints are the only team left to hire a coach. All other head coaching vacancies have been filled, and Steve Spagnuolo isn't in the mix for the Saints job. Chad, why are they great? You've got Mahomes, Kelsey, Andy Reid. But the offense has done, again, enough to win games, and certainly they came to life against Buffalo's defense last weekend. But it's also in a big way about Spags and how they build through the draft. The starters on defense through the draft is insane. McDuffie, Karlaftis, Jones, Bolton, Cook, Connor, Hicks. You've got Johnson, Watson, and on offense, Worthy and Noah Gray and Trey Smith and Humphrey and Pacheco and, of course, Mahomes. Their secondary has been terrific with Justin Reed. Outside of Justin Reed, they're all homegrown drafted players. They trade away Snead, a team that in a Super Bowl window, you normally want to keep the guy like that. And it turns out they knew they were going to be just fine without him. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. They always make the right choices over and over. But other organizations don't. They don't include Steve Spagnuolo in this list. I know he was listed as a preliminary target for the Raiders, but other organizations should make the right choice and hire him away. He's a good coach. The team would be better off for it, and so would 30 other teams across the NFL. I mean, you could say, well, other players, Chad, have left the organization, and it didn't cripple them. But the defense is really the leader of the three, that you've got Mahomes, and of course he's clutch. But that defense is week in, week out spectacular. And it's the system. Andy Reid, he is the Andy Reid of the team on defense, and he doesn't get mentioned enough for it.
And I would say that he's a little bit up there in age to get an opportunity as a head coach right now at 65 years old. But the Vegas Raiders just hired 73-year-old Pete Carroll.
Yeah, you're right.
To be their head coach. So, yeah, that certainly would buck the trend to go hire a 65-year-old guy to do it. But then I think about the Raiders, and if I'm looking at the perfect opportune spot to steal the Chiefs' secret sauce in their defensive coordinator with a division rival, then go hire Spags to be your head coach. And you hire a guy 8 years younger than the coach you just hired. So, and that's not me poo-pooing the Pete Carroll hire for the Raiders or anything, but that was the one spot where it would have made the most sense. You're trying to make headway in a very difficult division that's got great coaching from top to bottom, from Harbaugh to Andy Reid to Sean Payton. And then you can go get a little bit of that secret sauce in the Chiefs to lead your organization. That would have made a lot of sense for the Raiders. Instead, they hired Pete Carroll, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, who is a professional, who's got longevity in the NFL with the Seahawks. So I get it. I understand what the Raiders are going for there. But when you see the success of a Dan Quinn, who's a longtime defensive coordinator guy and sort of a culture establishing guy, in his bounce back now with Washington, it would have made a lot of sense to hire Spags away from the Chiefs. But instead, Hutton, that dynasty is going to remain intact. So whatever happens in this game, Chiefs either fulfill history and three-peat for the first time, the Super Bowl three-peat for the first time, or they don't. It doesn't matter. They're not going anywhere because every key component is going to be back outside of maybe Travis Kelce, who retires.
Yeah, and Spags wouldn't align with every organization. I'm not saying it's that obvious. And he's got the history that also follows him with the Giants and the Rams. I get that too. But I'm just saying, if you want to take out the Chiefs, that's how you go about it. It's the key piece. You can't go and sign Mahomes away, but you can with their defensive coordinator, and just how he's just as consistent as Andy Reid has been, and more so this year. It's been great. Also consistent, Chad, the SEC and basketball. By the way, I think when you say SEC, the brand itself is game day on Saturdays, right? And right now
it's college basketball game day.
Right now,
version of the show on Saturdays,
or on Tuesdays.
It's really nuts when you think about the SEC basketball season right now, and what we're witnessing, and how unprecedented it is. And let me give you two great examples just to illustrate just how wild the SEC is right now. Tennessee was number one in the country when the calendar turned January 1st, 2025. They started the month of January at number one in the country, and they started SEC play. They're 4-4 in the month of January. Now, you hear that and you think this is a complete bottoming out. This is a free fall from Tennessee, who was number one in the country, who was undefeated, and they faced a tough non-conference. It wasn't like they beat a bunch of nobodies. They beat some good teams. They went to Illinois and won at the buzzer on the road. They killed Baylor to win a preseason tournament. They've beaten some good teams along the way. They dominated some mid-ACC teams and even dominated a really good ACC team on the road in Louisville. So they played teams building into the season. They weren't paper champions. And they get to the conference, they're 4-4. But then you look at their losses. They lost at number 5 in the country currently. They lost at number 1 by 2 points this past Saturday with a chance to win it with a 3. They lost at number 24 Vanderbilt by 1 point. And they lost last night at home against number 12 Kentucky, their first home loss of the season, by 5 points. It was a bad loss for Tennessee last night. Kentucky was down their point guard. They didn't play particularly great defensively, and they shot 8 for 33 from uncontested three-pointers, not just threes. They shot 47 of those, the second most in school history. They could not hit the broad side of the barn, and when you do that against good competition, you're going to lose, and Tennessee lost a close game. Their wins this season, by the way, they beat the number 14 team in the country. They spanked them. They spanked the number 23 team at the time, I'll get to them momentarily, at home by 24 points. They beat Texas on the road, and they beat a team in Georgia that was ranked at the time pretty easily at home. So no slouches even for the wins. Speaking of teams that were ranked at the time, the flip side of this, the Arkansas Razorbacks, a tale of two programs right now. They entered SEC play 23rd in the country. They were ranked. They're now 1-6 in league play. 1-6 in league play. And they are staring down the barrel of John Calipari's return to Rupp Arena at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern, on Saturday night. That's what Arkansas is looking at, and they're doing it without their most talented player in Boogie Flant. Look, the SEC, it just means more in hoops this year. It is incredible the amount of depth in that conference. And for a team like Tennessee that's 4-4, there is no rest. There is no time to feel sorry for yourself for any team. They get number 5 Florida at home on Saturday, a team that beat them about 2.5 weeks ago by 30 points in Gainesville. And then, is it going to get easier after that? No. They're going to stay at home. They're going to play number 22 Missouri at home after that before going on the road for 3 of the next 4 games. It's not going to get any easier, Hutton. We're going to see a number of 7-11 or maybe even a 6-12 SEC team make the NCAA tournament. The way this thing is going right now. And at the end of it, former number 1 team in the country, Tennessee, they might finish 7-11 or 8-10 in the SEC. The way this thing is trending right now would not completely shock me. That's how wild this conference is.
It means for some great some NCAA tournament games because they're going to play each other quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just based on the bracket.
And at the very top, I think Auburn is clearly the best team in the country right now. I think they've got 8 seniors that play their veteran. They don't really have a weakness. They can play different types of styles. I mean, if I'm going to place a futures bet right now, I'm placing on Bruce Pearl to win a national title at Auburn. I think they're the best team in the country.
Two topics.
They're ranked number 1 right now.
2 thoughts as you say that I'm going to expand on to begin some shows upcoming during March or February. First off, everyone became Kentucky, basically. And everyone could become Kentucky, if not for everyone becoming Kentucky in the conference.
Yeah, someone can't be Kentucky, right? Yeah, even if you try, someone's not going to achieve it.
Because they're facing other programs that have gone up that mountain too, and to prove that they can also build to become that brand and style. Not the brand, the style and the dominance. But they're also facing programs that are also capable and doing it. And number 2, what you're describing is what the super conference in football can be. These matchups.
Yep.
No time for rest because here comes number 5 Florida. That's the intriguing part and that's honestly the NFL style that draws millions upon millions of people to watch it. I hear that and I'm like, yeah, let's see it. It's going to affect a lot of the setup and the overall feel of college football now. But man, that gets me energized for it, Chad. Like the thought of seeing those rankings beside every opponent on a schedule. It's great for it's great for like the Kentucky-Tennessee game without any rooting interest. If you're just a basketball fan, you're watching. That's fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like 5 years ago, were we saying that?
Yeah, good atmosphere. I mean, it's so much more national now too. Like I'm watching last night, and I think it was Molly McGrath's on the sideline for Tennessee, Kentucky, and I'm like, this is a Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern game on ESPN. It just everything feels bigger. And I do think you're seeing a situation, if you think about super conferences of football, where it's like the NFL where everybody's set up to go 500.
Yeah.
I feel like pretty much everyone outside of maybe 3 teams in the SEC feels like a team that could go 500, except for maybe, at the very top, Auburn, Alabama, maybe 1 or 2 others. It feels like everyone else is kind of battling for 500 in the conference. South Carolina is a good example. They're 0-8 in the SEC. But in that 0-8, they lost to Auburn by 3 points, a game they should have won, who's maybe the best team in the country at home. They lost at Vandy by 3. They lost to Florida, number 5 in the country, by 1 point. And they just lost to number 14 Mississippi State in overtime. Hutton, I think South Carolina is probably 7-3 in the ACC if they're playing an ACC schedule.
So think about this.
Maybe 6-4. They're 0-8 in the SEC.
And now the SEC has rolled in Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is coming back. This is year one of being relevant. So, I mean, the changing coach has opened the door to a style that can compete in the SEC. But, I can't help but think about the detriment of, I don't know why it may not even play a factor, but the ACC, the coaches are certainly in the SEC.
Yeah.
You got Duke, Carolina coming up, and there's, I want that same buzz that we used to have, but it's the coaches, too, that matter.
And Carolina just needs to be better. Duke's doing their part right now. They're number 2 in the country. They're very good. They're a team that can win it all.
The coaching, the head-to-head matchups, though, in that rivalry, like that matters, and I don't feel that. Like that, you get that from a Tuesday in the SEC.
Well, every night in the SEC, it's just pitfall after potential pitfall. There's just no game you look at unless it's like the very tippy top of the conference versus South Carolina at home for the team at the top.
Yeah.
But every other game I look at and I think, I could see this team winning that game. I could see that team winning that game. You could flip a coin in some of these games, and sometimes it does come down to who's hitting shots and who's not. Because so many of these teams now, the Steph Curry effect, they take so many threes. We saw it with Tennessee last night, and it bit them, where they refused to try any other shot other than a three, and they were open. Kentucky's daring them to shoot because they're not hitting anything.
And Barnes took the fall for it.
Yeah, and which he's known to do.
He said like he just didn't. He took the fall for saying that loss is on me. Has he done that quite a bit this year?
Not always. Sometimes he'll be more fired up at his team. But I know last night he said the disappointing part, he's like, we're not good enough to shoot 47 threes. He said, I think we're better shooters than we've shown the last 2 games.
And that made them more of a finesse version that he wanted.
I didn't do a good enough job of getting the message across clearly that we need to look at other shots down the stretch because the final 5 minutes of the game, Tennessee went 1 for 13 from 3 and took no other shots.
After battling back to get that
Kentucky didn't score a field goal in the final 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So they gave Tennessee every chance, and Tennessee's defense gave them every chance to pull off the comeback win. And Tennessee just consistently missed open threes down the stretch. So
this is a good question for Kelly in Vegas. The average spread this year in the SEC in conference play versus other conferences.
Let's give her a heads up on that so she knows.
The average spread, because that also tells you just how close the conference is to each other based on what Vegas is expecting the games to end up as. And how difficult it is to actually wager.
Yeah. North Carolina right now, by the way, is 13-9, 7th in the ACC. They just lost at Pitt last night by 8 as they get ready for Cameron Indoor on Saturday. And watch them go in and beat Duke. That's the beauty of that rivalry, right? North Carolina can be completely down. Doesn't matter when they play Duke. They could go in there and play great and pull off the upset win. Wouldn't surprise me.
So the average spread in the NBA, you got some lopsided games there too. How do you correct that? How do you correct the style, the brand? You mentioned threes, Chad. The 3-point world right now is the association. Well, Commissioner Adam Silver, he joined the Dan Patrick Show, and Dan asked him along these lines about the changes he could make. And it's not, let's fix the actual issues that are affecting the product. No. It's just let's just reduce the amount of time we have to watch the product.
Give me the wildest thing that you guys have considered. I'm sure there's always, we're going to try this. The NFL doing the kickoff the way they did. It's pretty crazy that that's what it looks like. Give me this has been discussed.
I mean, one that's only been discussed a little, I wouldn't put it necessarily in the category of being so wild, is potentially 2 free throws for a foul and a 3-point shot. I don't necessarily think I would do it in the last 2 minutes of the game, but I think that's something interesting. Something else that I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in a minority, as we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball is 2 hours. College basketball, of course, is
but
is
if
40
you
minutes.
like it, I'd say it has kind of a little bit of a push there.
Yeah, but it's such a dramatic change to the game. I mean, I think something like that would have to be talked more about over time. I mean, incidentally,
But the pitch clock was dramatic, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm a fan of what baseball did. I'm a baseball fan, and I think some of those changes have really increased sort of the engagement, the entertainment value of the game, and so I'm paying a lot of attention to that. And in fact, I've used the pitch clock, the sort of the increasing the size of the base, et cetera, in meetings at the NBA to say, if baseball, which is more locked into tradition, and I don't mean that negatively, than any other sport. And part of what baseball provides is the tradition, the legacy, that if they're able to make those changes, certainly we shouldn't be afraid to look at changes as well. So
I hope they look at more than just that and consider all changes. I like how open he was with the discussion. But it's the style of play. It's the way teams are going about playing the NBA style and the more European style. Then I wouldn't lean into it. I'd try to consider what the brand was when the ratings were up. That's what I would be looking at.
Yeah, and so the question I would have as a follow-up, I think Adam Silver's a smart guy, too, when he considers these things. And it's smart to consider some of these changes given the state of NBA ratings right now on television. Would shortening the game to 40 minutes prevent load management with teams, which is a problem also, with guys taking nights off? Would it help how hard teams go in the middle of the game? Because I think part of this, shooting the quick three and everything you see, it's just a lot of, I'm going to save wear and tear on my body and energy over the course of a game. I watch games down, I'm like, 8 guys aren't really doing anything because it's kind of a one-on-one. It's a little 2-man game, and then the 3 guys over there just kind of sitting there camped out waiting for the ball to be shot and either made or rebounded. If it doesn't, there's not a lot of motion going on and everything else you want to see. So would shortening the game help add to that? The more interesting thing here, big picture for all of this, is in football, more is more. No one's pushing for less. More teams in the playoffs, more games in the NFL. We want to get a 7th team in the NFL playoffs, not just 6, because everybody craves it so much. More is more. More is good. We want more in football. What are we talking about with everything else? Baseball, basketball, less. I want to sit in my seat for less time watching it. Let's get a pitch clock going. Let's get the bases bigger. I want to speed things up just a little bit more in baseball. Basketball, shorten the season. Let's start on Christmas Day. Let's not start during football season. Let's go to 60 games. Make the games matter more. Shorten the actual game length to a time that's more manageable for television. 2-hour games. Just big picture, keep an eye on that. What do we want as a sporting society? With football, it is more, more, more. Foot down, on the gas, let's go, baby. I want my ball. Everything else, I could do with a little bit less. I might care more if I had less of it. That's the way I feel about basketball right now and baseball.
I am. Why are we into SEC play right now? Because it's competitive, and the NFL is the example of 500 is what they're going for.
Yeah,
that's not the case in the NBA. So Chad knows my rule. I have the 3-minute rule. If an NBA game is within 10 points at the 3-minute mark, if someone's watching it, they can text me and say, "You got to watch this game." I don't want to watch an NBA game unless it's 3 minutes left and a team is up or down by 10, because that's when the game begins. So by making some adjustments to the 10 minutes instead of 12 or whatever, does that make my 3-minute rule go up to 6? Does it make it go up to 10 at the start of the fourth quarter? That's really where they've got to get me tuned in for a longer amount of time. I'm not invested in anything with the NBA in a non-NBA market. He mentioned the Major League Baseball changes. Those changes have made me more invested in a product where I don't have a team outside my door to go watch live. They're a local market, my team first league. That's great. That should be baseball. But the NBA, they're looking at the local markets, and that's fine. But to get back to what they were, the individual, like the players themselves have to be more relatable, and the league itself has to be competitive. And they don't have either right now. That's a huge issue. And I think Commissioner Silver is at least admitting, hey, we're discussing some things to change what we're doing because what we're doing isn't resonating with our fan base. We're losing fans. We got to keep who we have first. And then if you're investing in our product, we want to give you what you want. And then we need to get those people back that have left because we didn't give them what they wanted. How quickly can they turn that around? You know, can this be a version of, and it's an example that just comes to mind first. Sankey going to the ADs and saying, as a conference, we're demanding you get better, so do it. And then we're going to spread the wealth with you whenever we dominate. That's more or less what he said at the spring meeting, 6, 7, 8 years ago now?
Yeah.
And now they're doing it. So, I want to see how fast he can do. As the commissioner, Dan Patrick's right. You can do whatever you want. You can push it through. Let's go. Can he get it done? Can he get the players on board? Because right now it's a lush league, Chad. Where you're right. You play these styles of play.
It's a big inflection point right now. I can really point to this is to me the third huge inflection point in NBA in modern NBA history. Late 70s, before Bird and Magic were drafted, playing in the league starting in 1980. There was a drug problem in the league. There was a violence problem. There was an unlikability factor with most of America, with the basketball in the 70s, that a lot of most fans did not like, did not associate with, and the sport was at crisis point. Bird and Magic enter the league, all is well, glory days in the 80s, gives way to Michael Jordan in the 90s. Things are great. Michael Jordan leaves. I think that was another inflection point.
Yep.
Who are going to be the stars that step up? Then Kobe Bryant steps up, and Shaquille O'Neal, and Lakers Celtics are playing again in the finals in 2008. And boom, we got ratings again, and everybody likes basketball once again. I think we really reached another critical point right now. LeBron James is old. He's not going to play much longer. He's not as likable as he was before, early in his career, even though he's a huge global superstar. I think we're really at a point now where you need good leadership that's going to acknowledge the problem and look to change it. So whether you like shrinking the games to 10-minute quarters or cutting the regular season down to 60 games or whatever changes are to come, you should appreciate the fact that Commissioner Adam Silver is willing to sit there and acknowledge a problem. Because the last thing I want to hear from Adam Silver in this interview, well, if you point to this, scoring is up in these facets and these teams on the road are doing this and an international flavor. No, he knows the big problem. And that is that as a television product, they're suffering and they're getting whipped as opposed to the past. So they got to figure out a way to fix that. And the good thing about Adam Silver, Hutton, is he's not burying his head in the sand and he's willing to admit that there's an issue and start to talk about potential things that could help. I don't think any of these things are the solution ultimately, but could they help? Maybe.
Well, and see, they're more global, they're trying to blend the styles together. I get what they're doing, but they're bleeding here, and even LeBron admitted that, he was discussing the changes to the All-Star format. And he's like, we got to change more than the All-Star format.
Yeah.
So
it also, keep in mind, it comes at a time where NBC is about to get the NBA back.
Yep,
and if we want to talk about a heyday, glory days, the NBA, it's the NBA on NBC. They just hired today Reggie Miller as their lead analyst to be the NBA big lead analyst. A good move by them. That's a name everybody knows and a personality that everyone knows about.
And a guy that was on that network during the heyday.
And was a star. He's given the choke symbol to Spike Lee. Front row at Madison Square Garden, the heyday of NBA basketball.
The highest ratings, the highest number of people watching the product in their history.
Yep.
Was during that era.
Reggie Miller was playing when they were cutting back and forth in the OJ Bronco chase.
Yes.
Back and forth to the NBA playoff action at that time. Knicks, Pacers, all those things.
He was losing to Chicago during that time.
If you got to somehow capture that magic again. You almost got to go back to go forward.
Yeah.
And maybe going back to go forward is making, if the style's not really going to change all that much, maybe it is doing something on the outside like shrinking the length of the game to make it more of a digestible product for what we're seeing. I don't know that that's the answer. I just like that he's asking questions. And he's not just sitting back and trying to sell the league at all turns like it's the best thing ever when he knows it's not.
Chad, I would like to go back, but not forward. If Captain America doesn't represent Captain America anymore, Anthony Mackie, who's Captain America now, is saying that America isn't represented in Captain America.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. Like, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity, someone who is trustworthy and dependable. It's kind of, this is kind of like an aspect of a dream coming true. When I was a kid, all of us as actors, I believe, want to get back to that day before someone told you no. When you look out your door and you see a 5-year-old kid with a stick and he's slaying dragons to save the princess in the tower, that kid really believes there are dragons out there. That stick is really a sword and he's really trying to save that princess. And then one day somebody told him, no, there are no dragons, that's not a sword, and that princess is not there. And all of his little dreams were dashed. So, as an actor, I feel like our job is to get back to the day where we see that dragon and we slay that dragon to save that princess. And that's kind of what this movie was for me.
So, by the way, he's on a press tour as they're about to.
He's promoting Captain America,
which is, it is incredibly stupid, and it's just so dumb.
So much so he had to issue an apology.
Here's what he's clarifying here. Let me be clear about this, as if what he just said wasn't clear. Let me be clear about this. I'm a proud American, and taking on the shield of a hero like Captain America is honor of a lifetime. I have the utmost respect for those who serve and have served our country. Universal characteristics for Captain America that people all over the world can relate to. The first thing that comes to mind when I hear that is, if you go around the country and ask, how do you define the American dream? By and large, you're going to get something very similar in the answer. And this dude is living it.
Absolutely living it.
He's living it.
$10 million
and
he's going to make for this
there
movie.
Saying this stuff as if he's not able to achieve what he would like to achieve. And he's representing the character that is representative of the country in the name. It's incredibly stupid to first off, say this before the movie comes out. And second, to actually believe that. And comparing it to a dragon, which, by the way, isn't real, and the princess. Come on.
Well, and also the fantasy aspect of this, like he's talking about the dragon and the princess and all that, that part of it is in part why he gets to make $10 million to put on this silly costume and play Captain America opposite of Harrison Ford as President Thunderbolt Ross, who is the Red Hulk. Like that, that ability for the human mind to separate from reality into fantasy. And it starts with your ability and imagination as a kid to do so. Like, you're banking on that. You're going to make millions on that. And Hunt, to your point, if that's not the American dream, I don't know what is. Hearing this thing more and more, I get a little bit more irritated by it, because at first I'm thinking like, okay, he's speaking to a room maybe of international people or something, and he thinks that America's some, punchline to the rest of the world. So he's playing into that in some way. But then he says, I don't think America should play into it at all, talking about Captain America, when you really play it back and listen. I don't get it. I think he probably should have said more in his explanation than what he did.
He was in Rome, I think,
and
saying it.
And again,
but yeah, you're right.
The Hollywood people are so insulated in their little bubbles of this is what we believe because this is the news we get and this is what we see. I don't think Anthony Mackie hates America. I don't think he hates the troops. Hell, I don't think that he hates Donald Trump, honestly. I don't think he's that political of a guy. But I think when you're constantly fed that deal about, oh my gosh, America's a joke and it's tyranny and it's a democracy is threatened and this is happening and that's happening. You just regurgitate that shit back to people, especially when you're in a room full of Romans and you're thinking, well, they all hate America, so I want to make sure as I'm selling this movie in Rome that we don't make it about America because the rest of the world thinks America's a joke. Let me tell Anthony Mackie and everyone else something. People don't think America's a joke. There's no border crisis in Guatemala. They're not rushing there or Honduras to get there, all right? They're rushing to get into America because America is still an ideal that the rest of the world respects and strives for. An ideal like the Shield, Captain America. These are things that kids emulate and they want to be. You can't take America out of Captain America. Give me a break.
Right, and it's representing the American dream. About what things should be.
Yes.
And it's not, so you can't take that out of that's the point. Like, he's talking about the fantasy of dragons and the character itself. There's a kid that believes Batman is legit. Captain America, the character is legit. The whole thing is so incredibly stupid.
If the argument is in some way that, well, boy, America's backwards and we just elected this president. What does that say about America? And I'm speaking to internationally people. I'm like, dude, you're a black Captain America.
It's the American dream.
That's great. Like an African American is Captain America. I don't think that was being written in the comic. I don't know my comic book history. I don't think that was being written in the comics in the 1950s.
Right.
When America was a very different place in terms of civil rights. We have progressed big time since that time to where now Anthony Mackie, African American, can portray Captain America. That's cool, man. You're making $10 million through the movie. That's great. I hope the movie kicks ass. It probably won't because all the Marvel movies have sucked over the past 5 years. So I'm not hopeful, but sell the hell out of that movie. Don't diminish America while you're doing it.
No. Exactly.
The place where the land of dreams and opportunity where young Anthony Mackie one day never could have envisioned playing Captain America and making $10 million to do so. But then the moment he gets to Italy, he's going to say, guys, I want to take the America out of Captain America.
We're going to represent
let's get rid of the America part of this.
Liam Cohen thinks it should be Captain Cohen. After he said that, this is the honesty part is the how he wants to describe the franchise.
And I've always liked Anthony Mackie. I think he's fine. He's an entertaining guy. But come on, man. You really need to walk that back better.
Captain Hollywood.
This probably should be a bigger controversy that the guy who plays Captain America is saying, I don't think America is a part of it.
Yeah. It's not representative of the audience I'm sitting in front of here in Rome. Come on. We don't represent the values that we're discussing in the film.
Well, and you don't look, if you don't want to go to Italy and say a Captain America is big to me because America is far superior to every other country in the world. Our people are better people. If you don't want to do that to an Italian audience, fine. But you could have said something like, the idea that is America is perfect in form.
And it's what you strive for.
That's what he appreciates. It's striving for excellence, striving for the best. We don't always get it right. We're not always perfect, but we're striving to be perfect at all times.
It's what it should be.
And that's what Captain America is, and that's what he means to me.
Yeah.
Boom. I'm now Anthony Mackie's publicist. I will gladly take a paycheck for that. You're welcome. You're welcome, Anthony Mackie.
The publicist
that is what the press release should have said afterward.
Well, the clarification did.